Capture the passion.
Welcome back, CPTP Season 3, Episode 5. My name is Jorge Ramirez, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Jose Estrada, who is an occupational therapist. Jose, tell us about yourself.
Hi, Jorge. Thank you for letting me be here. So about myself, I think the most important thing for me, at least culturally, is I am a first generation college graduate student, and just an occupational therapist now. So very proud of where I came from. Very proud of my roots and where my parents brought me here.
Where are they from?
Guatemala. So they are from Guatemala. Yeah, so from Guatemala, my dad's a gardener, my mom is a housekeeper. So from those humble beginnings to where I am now, I feel very blessed and very inspired to like share my story and hopefully reach the target audience and even whatever audience, and hopefully give them a little bit of insight into what I do. And like I said, I'm an occupational therapist with the school district. I work with kids who are on IEPs and who need my help in school.
So I'm curious to know, a previous episode we spoke to a DACA student, and we talked a lot about the challenges that she faced as navigating through the higher ed. As a first generation student, having immigrant parents, what was your drive into go to school? Did it come from them, or was it more because you just wanted to do something different? What was it?
I think that's a great question. Actually, it came from them.
Yeah.
It was just they totally drove. They gave me that passion for improvement and for wanting to do more in terms of. They set the example of like hardworking people. When I was very young, my dad broke all type of labor laws because I would go work with him. I would go work with him as a gardener, and so
Child labor.
child labor. So in the summer, the hottest time you could go, the worst time you could be a gardener, he would have me out there like raking leaves and trying to do all of that hard work, and then say like, this is what could happen if you don't get your education. So I'd rather you work hard with your brain than be out here in the sun.
Oh, my goodness, that's exactly what my late dad would tell us is. My dad was also in landscaping.
Okay.
And there's a picture of me and him. Was a huge Dodger fan. I'm a Giants fan. So there's a picture of us together.
Yeah.
He's wearing his Dodger shirt. I'm wearing a Giants jersey, and he's completely just burnt. Like I look at that picture, and it's like, wow, my dad looks like if he was out in the sun all day. And it's like, well, that's what he did. And his advice was, there's 8 of us, and he would tell us, we came into this country so you guys can do something.
Yeah.
Go to school, get an education, have a career.
Yes.
And it's interesting how you got the same message.
I did. I heard it loud and clear, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this another day. But I did it the whole summer, and I remember how hot and how uncomfortable it was and how tired I came from, and just it would motivate me to be like, okay, I got to go read that book for summer reading, or I got to do my book reports and get good grades. And my mom the same way, she was just like also encouraging us to like study and work hard and do all that. Otherwise, like I said, as a housekeeper, she also worked hard in her own way, physical labor inside of the house, which isn't fun at all, because we would have to also like, okay, time to get the mops out, time to scrub the floors, time to make everything spick and span. So I was just like, well, that is not a place where I'd like to be, but I appreciate that they're there for us to, get a higher education and really do our best in school.
What was your higher education experience like? Where'd you go? What'd you study?
So for undergrad, I went to USC, and I'm a Trojan. There you go, fight on. But it was interesting. So my academic journey was very interesting because I had the idea of becoming a lawyer. So I was just like, I'm going to be a lawyer. So like I said, my parents immigrated over here. So when they got here, they knew their hardworking professions, but they also knew limited ideas of what you could be to show you educated. So you could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be an accountant. Those were my
The only three
the only
choices you had.
three
Yeah.
that were like in my head. So I was just like, well, I don't really want to be a doctor. I don't want to be an accountant. And I was just like, but I love the People's Court. So I used to watch the People's Court, and I used to watch like these shows about like being a lawyer and
Judge
doing all
Jose.
yeah, exactly. Like Judge Judy, all those shows. I was just like, I could do this. Like this is fun. Like I like hearing these cases. They seem interesting, and so I was just like, okay, maybe I'll be a lawyer. So going to USC, I had this idea of I was going to be a lawyer, and so I did. I did some business law. I did a business law minor and a communication major, and I was just like, okay, well, I need to know how to get that argumentation ability. So I had classes where I learned how to do that, and so I was just like, okay, I'm just prepping for law school, and then I took the LSATs. And then I got into law school, and I was just like, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Because not knowing what an actual attorney did or the education that went into
The
it,
process
yeah,
of it,
the
right?
whole process.
Yeah.
I was in for like a rude awakening, like learning about that it was based on like the Socratic method of teaching, where they call on you, and oh my gosh, I went to law school for a little bit. Every day I was still like, please don't call me, please don't call me. And so it was hard. It was very difficult. I didn't feel at peace there.
Yeah.
And I think so in law school they grade on a curve where there's only a certain amount of A's, a certain amount of B's, and so forth. And so very competitive. And that's not me at all. I mean, I like competition, but not for my grades. So I'm just like, okay, I don't really fit in here. And I think the biggest struggle for me was telling my dad, again, a role model for me. He's always been a role model for me. Dad, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. So I had a lot of sleepless nights where I was just like, oh my God, how am I going to tell him this? And eventually I got the courage to be like, Dad, I don't want to be a lawyer. And I got the most unexpected, like, it's okay. Like, I was not expecting it to be like,
that support.
Yeah, that support.
Yeah.
But he's always giving me the support. So I don't know why I made it. I guess you never want to think that you're going to disappoint your parents. But he was just like, you're okay. Like, this is going to be your life. You need to figure out where you're most happy. And so that big like weight on my shoulders or weight off of my chest just came off, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can do something else. I can explore something else. But then the problem was, what was it? What did I need? What now? What do I explore? And at the time, there was a person that I was dating, and she was doing occupational therapy. She was learning about it, and without like second guessing it, she was just like, "You have a personality for it. You have traits for it. You should study it. You should go for it." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, okay, well, I don't know what it is, but you seem to think that I'm good for it, so I'm gonna enroll." I took a lot of prereqs that I didn't do, like a lot of science stuff that
right.
as a communication major, I didn't really focus on science. So I went to El Camino College, and I did some prereqs in El Camino College. I did some prereqs at another community college at Glendale Community. So I got all those prereqs out of the way, and then I ended up going to Dominguez Hills for the occupational therapy program, and that was a terrific school. And I felt much more at home. All the people there were friendly, they were nice, they were willing to help. There wasn't a curve. Everyone got A's. So I was just like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And then I stumbled across as an occupational therapist, you could work in many different fields. So you could work in the medical field, you could work in a hospital, you could work for a skilled nursing facility with older geriatric patients. You could work like myself in a school district. And out of all those options, school district was last. And so I was just like, so my dream, but that. I was just like, no way. I can't work with kids. I don't know how to work them. I don't know what to do. I don't know nothing. I don't know anything.
So let me ask you this. Occupational therapy, so it's like a whole branch, but then you can narrow it down into the population that you want to work with?
Exactly. You could be very specific. So in my mind, I was like thinking, okay, I'm going to be an occupational therapist who just deals with like rehab with the upper extremity. So like your arm. And so I was just like hand therapist. So I could, people who have workers' comp issues or who have like difficulties with their rehab, like if they get a surgery on their elbow or any of those things, you could really focus in on that. And so I was just like, okay, that seems really specific. And I don't have to worry about all these other things. So I was just like, that is my area. My whole journey has been like, try and see if that's where you're supposed to be. But that was for me. And then I finally got to the try it, and that's where I belong. So when I was in the hand therapy clinic, I did a rotation there. It was also eye opening for me. It was just like, okay, well, I'm doing what I thought I wanted to do, but it doesn't seem like the right place for me. It got too repetitive, or it got like the clients that I worked with were lovely people, but they were just not. I wasn't making that connection, I guess, that I was thinking that I would have made. And then when I did my rotation in the school district, oh my gosh, it just like
This is it.
Yeah, this is it. I felt at home. I got to, dress the way I wanted to dress. I love wearing like, today I'm wearing my Sharks, but I love, I love to wear my shirts. Us working together. You've seen, you've seen my shirts. I would come in with cartoon shirts and shorts, and all the kids light up because they know Bugs Bunny, or they know whatever I have on here, and so they're very happy to see me. And we could talk about like things that they like. So I build a lot of rapport with them, and it's fun what I do. I mean, I get to help a very specific population, which are the kids on special education. But I help them build up different skills, and I mean, as we go forward, I'm sure I could detail it more, or however.
Something that stands out there, and I think it's a very important message, is that in episode 2, Victor Soto talked about success isn't linear. And it's interesting that a lot of times I think we get so caught up with what's next. What's next? In our previous episode, I asked Anna that. She was our DACA student, and she was saying, well, I accomplished this. What's next with that? What's next with that? And I intentionally asked her. And then I remember jumping in and saying, well, don't forget to celebrate yourself. Because I think a lot of the times we are so focused into this linear of success without realizing that you can take all types of pathways because you're learning about yourself. You might learn something that you had no idea that was going to be your passion, like in your case. Going from wanting to be studying lawyer, to occupational therapist, it's very different. But you still have a very successful path. And now working with children that have a specific need, and you're providing that resource. What's it like? So do you work with a specific age? Do you work with all ages? What is it what type of therapy do you provide, and what's the age range?
I think that's a great question. So I work with whatever age you come in, so as young as 3. So I work with preschoolers, and
that's where we met.
Where we met at the little ones at 3, to all the way to 22. A lot of people aren't aware that you could be at school past 18, but
that's adult ed, right?
The adult ed and kids on special education could be there until 22. So I've had them all between 3 to 22, and they're all very different, with all unique needs, and a lot of them come with different eligibilities, from like autism to Down syndrome to ADHD or specific learning disability, or orthopedic impairments. So it really varies in the different, I guess, eligibilities that I see. And every kid is different. So just because they have ADHD or just because they have autism doesn't mean that I'll prescribe like my treatment plan in the same way to like help them. And you might be wondering, like, what do I help them with? So a lot of times it's very specific. So I take a look at some of their visual abilities, their fine motor abilities, so that's their finger skills, their hand skills, their ability to like process different like sensory input. So it's a lot. It's a
It's,
lot
yeah.
of different things that I take a look at. So if you ever have read any of my assessments, so when I go in and I
Yes.
take a look
Yes.
if they qualify, I take a look at a bunch of different things, and
Mhm.
I look at, are any of these skills, are they lacking any of these skills,
Mhm.
or are they not at the age equivalent where they should be, and is that impacting their ability to perform the tasks that are needed to be done in school, like
Right.
cutting or writing or doing maybe a craft or following along with like a multi-step direction,
Right.
or can they sit, or do they need to be running around bouncing up
Mhm.
and down, or
Yeah.
you've seen it. And
Yeah.
so there's sometimes where they need that certain input before they could get to the tabletop activity. So
Right.
that's a lot of what I take a look at.
Mhm.
But in terms of treatment is so fun.
Yeah.
I think designing the treatment is all based on, like, it's very client centric.
Mhm.
So what do these kids like? So this kid might like Transformers. So I might do like a whole activity based on his likes, but that's gonna address it. So if he's having difficulty following multi-step directions, I'll maybe print out a transformer and he'll have to color it and then cut it and then paste it. So that's
Multiple
multiple
steps.
steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's something that he enjoys. So
Mhm.
I want to get that buy-in. So I think it's great that I get to know the kids
Mhm.
and like make the treatment very specific for
Yeah.
them.
You talk a lot about their interest, and I'm going to reference back to our first episode this season. Dr. Judy Cross, who talked about children learn best and are more successful when it's geared towards their
Mhm.
interests.
Yeah.
Now, you're servicing children that have an individualized education plan, an IEP, with certain eligibility.
Mhm.
So here, you really need to know what their interest is, so they can thrive on
Mhm.
that, and then provide that additional resource that you provide for them. So how does eligibility work? Does it need to be diagnosed by a pediatrician? Is it just based on the teacher's perspective? Take us through the steps before a child becomes for a child to be eligible to receive your services?
That's a great question. I think so the very first step is for this particular student or child to be identified by the teacher. The teachers the teacher and the parent are very like the first line of defense kind of
Okay.
thing. So maybe this particular student um stands out in a way.
Hmm.
Um, Now, maybe their learning is a little bit impacted or looks a little different from the rest of the kids. Now, the next step would be to what's called a student success team, where
Hmm.
they get the teacher and they get maybe other professionals and the principal involved, and they meet and they talk about, like, what are some strategies we could do
Hmm.
right now to see if he or she doesn't need additional services or need any of these things. So maybe we'll give suggestions or recommendations. Try this,
Yeah.
and see if with those little accommodations they improve. Now, if that doesn't work, the next step would be to request an IEP. And an IEP is an individualized education plan, where the school psychologist comes in and maybe other professionals come in to evaluate that child to see if they have a certain if they meet a certain criteria for an eligibility
Hmm.
for this individualized education plan. It's determined by the psychologist. If the psychologist finds that, okay, this student meets the eligibility of a child with autism like characteristics, or another health impairment, or um, some specific learning disability or intellectual disability, or all of
Hmm.
these things, then we could continue with that process. And then we could add support services like speech, or like my services, occupational therapy,
Hmm.
or possibly like adaptive physical education. So a lot of those other things could come on board if the psychologist finds that they're eligible to
Right.
have additional services
Hmm.
beyond what's available in the classroom already.
Hmm.
So, is that
Yeah, no, yeah. So you're taking us through the initial step. The teacher, the parent have a concern. They identify it. They come. Then they go to the administrator. with the SST, Student Success Team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what are some strategies we can implement before we bring in the specialists?
Mm-hmm.
Then when they're brought in, then they make that determination. They are the ones that decide, you know what, we need to take it to the next step.
Yeah.
We'll do some evaluation. Then we'll start bringing in the resources to the child. Let's talk about special ed as a whole. A lot of experience that I've had with parents. I've been in the field of early childhood education for 23 years now, and a lot of the times I've seen a lot of resistance from parents,
Mm-hmm.
specifically special education,
Mm-hmm.
where denial
Mm-hmm.
for the parent. One case, it stands out so much, and I completely understood the parent. She said, I know something's wrong with my child, but I don't want my child in special ed.
Mm.
And asking her, well, why not? And she broke down. She instantly just broke down.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I had a good relationship with the parent where she was willing to open up and tell me the whole situation. The situation was she was the special ed student.
Mm.
Now, she went to school at a time where special ed students were bussed in
Mm.
and bussed out. And
Mm.
all the special ed students were in one segregated classroom and pretty much couldn't interact with anyone else, went to lunch, to recess at their own time. And everybody knew who these special ed students were. And that was her fear, was I don't want my daughter, who's only 3,
Mm-hmm.
to go that route because I had a bad experience.
Yeah.
I remember telling the parent, well, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
Special ed has it's very different. And also depends on her eligibility.
Yeah.
We're at a time now where it's inclusive,
Mm-hmm.
right? Depending on the child's needs, depending on what their eligibility is, then there's different resources. But special ed, it's not what it was years ago, where this is special ed class only and no one else can interact with them. It's not like that anymore, right?
That's correct. I think special education has come a long way from those times. There's still parents who are very hesitant um, because special education does have this, like, I think, history of stigmatization. Where you're just like, oh, your kid's in special education, so obviously something is wrong, or something, maybe they're not, up to par to other kids. I think that's where it comes from. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of, I think, conscious efforts for inclusion.
Yes.
We want these kids
Right.
to be kids, because obviously they are, to interact, socialize with their kids who aren't on an individualized education plan, to have like a class with them, or to play with them on the playground, or to have lunch with them, or all of these opportunities to interact and socialize. And obviously the degree of needs differs
Right.
from kids
Right.
in special education. There are kids who are very severely impacted, but they're still trying to be included.
Right.
So I think it's a great thing that we're very conscientious of including all kids.
Yeah.
And I've seen it where these kids on the IEPs, or the kids who are more impacted, there's an innate kindness from other students who are like, hey, there goes such and such. Oh, hey, and they'll wave to them, or like be very happy to see them.
Right.
So it's not like they're trying to exclude them, or so it really has come a long way.
Yeah, and that's where we met.
Yeah.
We met at a preschool collaborative classroom, and I remember when I was working in that classroom, many people would come in and always ask, "So, who's the child that has the IEP?"
Mm-hmm.
And I would always ask them, "Well, guess." I can't tell.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
It's inclusive now. The collaborative classroom in preschool looks like we have children that in the roster that have identified with an IEP, and others that are not considered the general ed. You put them together, and they just commingle. They interact with each other. There is no way of saying, "Hey, you know what? You have an IEP, so we're not going to talk to you, interact with you." That has really come a long way, and I've seen that, and I really enjoy being in that environment. Another thing that's important, and for clarification, teachers can't diagnose children, right?
Mhm.
We don't have, despite the the consistency or the behavior that we might see, we can't diagnose into saying, oh, you know what, that child is on the spectrum or that child needs a special need. Teachers can't diagnose, right?
No, and neither can school psychologists. That's why I said like autism like,
Mm-hmm.
or like they meet the eligibility of this. The only people who can diagnose are those in like the medical
The
field.
medical field, right?
Exactly. So like psychiatrists out in the medical field, because we have a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. So
Mm-hmm.
it would be, if you wanted that determination, if you wanted like a diagnosis, you would have to get it from the pediatrician, who would then make a referral to
Right.
another specialist.
And also to continue with that, the child doesn't need to have a diagnosis to have an IEP, correct?
No, they don't. How if they come with a diagnosis from their pediatrician, from their psychiatrist, that definitely will be taken into consideration when we're determining the IEP eligibilities. So they could come with it and just be like, "Hey, my child needs additional support because he has
Right.
already been identified." So it's like another, okay, well, you got that step already taken
Mhm.
care of,
Yeah.
and let's take that into
Let's continue, yeah.
consideration. Yeah.
And I love what you just said, additional support.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what special education is.
Yeah.
Additional support.
Definitely.
It's not the stigma that society sometimes uses with special ed, using certain words to identify children. We're well beyond and past that. We're now looking at children as how much more support can we give? And realistically, how much support do we really want? I want to get as much support as I
Yeah.
can to be successful.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
as adults, we see it that way when we're working with children and we see, okay, so here's Jorgito. He's lacking certain areas. I can't provide those resources, but guess what? I know who can.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to come in, going through the process, of course. You come in, you provide Jorgito with those extra resources.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't stay with him the rest of education or career, right? There's a way for him to
Exit. Yeah.
exit. And what's that like?
I think that it's great when we come on board and we're able to foster those skills and like encourage them and kind of cultivate them and like get Jorgito or whatever student is there to like reach their potential. And then I think exiting or graduating the
Yeah.
student from like, okay, you don't need as much help, can be well, for me it's very exciting and
Yeah.
really rewarding.
Of course.
But for parents, sometimes it could be scary. And I totally understand that, because they're like, well, how's he going to do it now without you? Or is he really ready? So sometimes I get that, like that hesitancy.
Yeah.
And I just kind of congratulate and really let them know they're ready to exit.
Yeah.
I know it's like taking the wheels off the training bike, but they're ready to try it on
Harder on
their
the parents than it is on the
It
kids.
is, right? It is.
And you
But-
also don't want to you don't want to cultivate this codependency,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're helping the children develop the skills that they needed more.
Yeah.
So eventually go branch on with the general ed students, and that should be the goal, right?
Yeah, definitely. The every school district, I think, aims for the least restrictive environment. So they really want to make sure that they get like kind of like the right prescription, the right like amount of support. Not too much,
Mhm.
not too little, but just right. So and when they're ready and it's just they don't need as much, that's when we start to like scale it back and
Yeah.
just say. And obviously, I'll do an assessment, something formal, where I'll evaluate all their skills and make sure that they have them all all the necessary skills to continue to progress in their curriculum.
Yeah. So the services that you provide, is it one-on-one?
It can be. It can be sometimes, depending on like their behaviors, or depending on like if they need that really like structured, like let me just work on you one on one. I'll do that, and for the most part, that's how I'll start them off. And I think, especially with the little ones, I think they need that one to one instruction, because when you get too many kids involved, then it's just like trying to wrangle them and like trying to like keep them
I've seen
together.
that too.
You've seen that. So
Yeah.
I'm just so for me, it's just really focused on like what's the best method to deliver my intervention.
Yeah.
Is it one-on-one, or would they benefit like me and them and a friend,
Hmm.
to maybe work on other skills, social skills like sharing, taking turns, maybe learning a game or learning from their peer. A
Hmm.
lot of kids do that peer modeling. So if I bring their peer who's maybe a little bit more advanced in a certain skill, they'll try to copy them, or they'll
Yeah.
try to like behave like them, or those things. So sometimes it's like that, because I mean, obviously I'm not three, so they'll feel like, okay, well,
Right.
but sometimes it really works when they work with somebody else. But it all depends on the student, if I want to go one on one, or if I want to do a group with
Hmm.
them. But
Yeah.
and that's one of the great things about my job. There's no wrong way to
Hmm.
do it, I would say. As long as you're using your clinical reasoning, and you're like, you understand why you're doing it a certain way, and you start to see if that's the way that works best for them, or you modify it, you're doing a terrific job, I
Yeah.
feel like. Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
So, do you work in a classroom? Do you go from classroom to classroom, school to school?
oh, yeah.
What is it? What is it that you do?
I currently I am the occupational therapist for 8 different schools. So
8 different schools.
yeah, so
Wow.
a lot of driving, a lot of
Uh-huh.
time management, a lot of learning different students, learning
Mhm.
different staffs, learning every different layouts of schools. So it is a lot to kind of juggle, but once you start to get in the rhythm of things, once you start to figure out what day you're gonna go to what school, the bell schedules, the early dismissals, all those things that sometimes,
Yeah.
on top
Wait,
of
today's what? What's today? What time they call it?
exactly, exactly. So all those different things, you kind of figure out like, okay, this is how I'm gonna tackle this school on this certain day. I'll work with this teacher on this certain day, or this student with on this certain day. So it like it's very personal. It's very individualized to
Right.
the therapist, how they're gonna deal with it, which is something I really enjoy about
Mhm.
my job, that I get to figure out kind of like a puzzle.
Mhm.
Like, I'm gonna go here this day. I'm gonna go here this day. I'm gonna see this kid. This kid. Oh, this kid's absent. I gotta go over here
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
yeah,
How challenging is it? So you go to school, different classrooms. You're working in the classroom. You're
yeah,
not taking the kids out. Again, goes back to how it was before, where okay, all the special ed kids, you're here today. Mr. Estrada is gonna come in. He's gonna work with all of us. It's more of today I'm gonna go to Mr. Ramirez. Tomorrow I'm going somewhere else,
hmm
and I'm taking Jorgito into his classroom. I'm coming into his
hmm
environment and providing those resources for him.
yeah, definitely. We have two models of therapy. We do what's called the pushing model, which is what you described, where I go into the classroom and I provide that support to the student,
Mhm.
and maybe we'll go to a table, or if they're working on, like, say his goal for the student is coloring, and everybody else is coloring, we're gonna stay right there. We're
Yeah.
gonna color it, and I'm gonna give him the support, and maybe modify how he's doing it, or figure out why he's having
Mhm.
difficulty, and continue working on the same thing. But say, for example, his goal might be coloring, but the kids are now dancing, then maybe we'll do a little bit of the dance, and then let's go to the table
Oh,
and do a
okay.
little bit
Yeah,
of
yeah.
coloring. um, and then there's the pull out method, where, okay, maybe he needs that to be taken from that, like, maybe distracting environment,
Mhm.
and we need to go work in my classroom,
Mhm.
and we could really work on, like, maybe letter formation, or
Mhm.
maybe cutting, or maybe all of these things, and I really get a chance to tailor it to him, to the student, and really tailor it to like what they're having difficulties with, without maybe the other students like wondering
Right.
why is he having difficulty.
Yeah.
So there's that too.
You usually get other students coming like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Yeah, well, in a good way, in a good
Yeah,
way,
you're right, right.
because I'm the guy who brings the toys, and they're like, "Hey, I want to go with that guy.
I
I
saw
want
that
to
a
go
lot.
with
I
that
saw
guy.
that a
I
lot.
want the one with, I want the guy with the cartoon shirts. I want
It's
to go
like,
with it."
teacher, can I go play with them? Like,
Yeah,
oh, right now he's attending
yeah,
to Jorgito.
yeah,
He's working with them. When he's done with them, he has
yeah.
time. You may ask him, but why is he playing with those? And, well, you have to ask him. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I think that's, oh man, I feel like
You're the cool teacher
the
coming in.
cool
That's what it
teacher,
is.
exactly. I'm the cool teacher coming in, and everyone's like, "When's it my turn? How can I play with you?" And so again, going back to what we talked about, like, this some of the kids want this service
Yeah.
but don't need it.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think the parents will miss that part of it where mine is very play based and like
Mm-hmm.
very child based
Yeah.
and things that are gonna be fun, but we're gonna work on those
Right,
skills.
right, of course, and that's a very good point that you bring up, and that's something that has been a topic in a lot of this season has been play and how children learn best is
Yeah.
through play.
Yeah.
Now you're providing occupational therapy using play,
Mhm.
which I mean, there's no way you're going to fail at that. You know, providing that resource for the child because the child's you're using their interest, you're using play, and it's to help them continue to develop. Hey, that's a recipe for success.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, have you ever had any students that are just not working with you where it's like giving you that challenge where it's like Jorgito's just having an off day today and he's not cooperating with you? And if you have, what's your strategy?
Well, that's a I think that's a great question. I'll never forget one of my mentors when I was learning this profession was just like, there are gonna be those days where
Hmm.
you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do, and you're like turning your wheels. But just remember, like, they're kids. They're gonna want to play. Like, just
Yeah.
play. Just figure out. Like, let's just play. And there are times when kids want to hide under the desk or want to run away. Or okay, let's run away. But you're gonna step on these circles that are like blue or red, or I'll call them out. Or if you're gonna hide underneath there, let's hide together and let's build this potato head.
Hmm.
Or like,
I remember the
I'm
potato.
gonna come to you. I'm
Yeah.
gonna come to you, not you come to me. If you're having that type of day, so we'll try everything. I have you've seen my bag. It's like a
Yeah,
Mary Poppins bag.
yeah.
I'm bringing this Mary
Yes.
Poppins bag full of different toys, which are my tools.
Yeah.
I'll have anything from like slime to like stickers. I have fieldwork students who I teach,
That's
who I'm
right.
now
Yes, yes,
teaching
right,
how
right.
to do this. And I'm just like, one thing about this job, you got to have plan A through Z, man.
Yeah.
Because you got to, like, there will be days when your plan A works and it's you flying perfect, but you always have to have that backup plan. And eventually, once I look through my bag enough, I find something that clicks with them. Or maybe I'll take the time to figure out why they're feeling upset, and that human interaction and that human aspect of it, the emotional aspect, and maybe they'll tell me why, and then
Yeah.
I'll say, okay, well then let's watch a video of how we can calm down, or let's do some exercises to calm down. So I really just kind of like analyze what's going on
Mhm.
and how I can get them back to like, okay, now let's try to color, or now
Yeah.
let's try to cut,
Right.
or let's try to do something.
So it's not as rigid as I'm gonna come in. I got 20 minutes with you. We're gonna get right to it, whether you like it or not. It's more of let me see how you're feeling today. Oh, okay, you're a little distracted. How am I gonna get creative
Hmm.
in my bag that I
Yeah,
have A through Z plan
yeah.
to get those services that you need? You mentioned a very important element, and this is one of the main reasons for our podcast is mentorship.
Hmm.
So you mentioned the mentor that you had name drop. Who was it?
Oh, her name was Jenny Gesso. She was a terrific. I think I modeled my whole like career after her.
Mhm.
I was very blessed, I want to say, to have her as my educator.
Mhm.
She was like such a lovely woman who loved toys.
Mhm.
I mean, my closet looks like hers now, where it's just like stacks and stacks. When Toys R Us went out of business, I went
You were
into
there.
business. Yeah, it's just like, okay, I'll take this, I'll take that, I'll take that. So I was very like, okay, clearance things, I love it. So it seems like I took her approach to like, kids love to play. You bring out toys, they're gonna play, they're gonna figure it out, and just like whenever you can, analyze the toy. What do they need to do? Do they need to work on those, eye hand coordination
Yeah.
skills? Do they need to pick up little things? Do
Mhm.
they need to wait for their turn, sit in their chair? Like
Mhm.
all of these skills that we're trying to foster with a toy,
Right.
they're gonna gravitate to it. And like I said, she just really did a great job of making me feel like I could do this. And even if I didn't think I could do this, just play.
Yeah.
And you will do this.
Can't
And
lose.
yeah, I can't lose.
and
And it's the best part of my job. I get to be a kid, like from 7:30 to 4, and then go to pay the bills afterwards. But I get to be a kid for such a.
And that's the beautiful thing about the education field is that we get paid to be kids.
Yeah.
We
I love it.
get paid to play with kids.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, obviously develop them to their full potential. And you're talking about developing skills. You use hand-eye coordination a couple of times, and it's in one of the classes that I teach. I teach students understand that writing is a skill, cutting is a skill.
Oh yeah.
Anything that we do, it's a skill, and it takes time to develop to get to that point. The example that I give is, think of a bodybuilder, what the bodybuilder looks like. That individual didn't show up one day and did one rep and boof, got the result. It takes training of the muscles. It takes understanding of the diet. It takes discipline and consistency to get to that point. And it's the same thing with children. The type of services that you're providing is you're building on that to get to that goal. It's one of the things that I've experienced in my career, fighting with administrators and leadership into, you want them to write their name, but you haven't built up the skill. So how can we get to that point of writing the name if you haven't built up that skill? The child has no fine motor skills. The child has no hand-eye coordination. Then play. Use the slime, use the sand, use the sensory stuff, hand-eye coordination, anything that gets those muscles moving to build them to get to that skill. And I'm asking, and now I'm getting to the question that I'm going to ask is, have you ever worked or been challenged by teachers that want that result right away? You're coming in here as a therapist. This is where Jorgito is, but I need him here now. Do you ever get that, or any challenges with teachers that you've been working with?
I think, yeah, I definitely have. I've gotten it from teachers and from parents. So part of the IEP, or the individualized education plan, is to have meetings of like, this is where we'd like to see the student progress to.
Right.
Like, obviously we want them to get to grade level, like what they need to do. But a key component of the IEP is that individualized portion of it. You have to realize, okay, we're going to try to get him there, but we have to look at where he is now and what he can do and where we think he can be. And sometimes it can be frustrating. Why? Or they don't understand that, okay, but why isn't he there yet? Well, it's because he's not ready to be there. We need to continue to foster those skills. He's making progress on his time, like, or her time. And we're doing it like, basically they're leading us, right? Like, how are their skills developing? Like how you mentioned the bodybuilder, like if I wanted to hit the weights today, doesn't mean by tomorrow I'll look like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, even though that's what I would want.
Right.
So it's all like how much, how they're just skills develop, and the different things that teachers do also helps develop them. And there's also that buy-in from the student. If they don't want to draw today, or if they don't want to work on those skills, then okay, well then today might be a day where those skills aren't fostered as much as the previous day. So there's a lot of that.
And that's why you bring the bag.
That's where I bring the bag. And
I have this vivid memory of you with Mr. Potato Head. So when you left, one of the kids said, I wanted to play with Mr. Potato Head, but Jorgito's teacher took Mr. Potato Head. And so we had the conversation around like, look, Mr. Estrada comes in to work with Jorgito. He uses Mr. Potato Head. Okay, if you want to see Mr. Estrada, then there needs to be a criteria. I remember using the word criteria, and that child said, well, what's a criteria? And I said, well, this is a conversation that we need to have with your mom and dad, because I can't change that about you. We ended up ordering a Mr. Potato Head. We had it in our class. Now, in regards to the multiple hats that you have to wear, you've talked about children needing to buy into that bag of tricks that you have. Has there ever been a challenge in your career where you felt burned out? There's been a lot of talk, especially since exiting COVID. We're having a teacher shortage again, and teachers are getting very discouraged. We just had a strike with LA Unified with their teacher assistant and all their assisting supporting staff. Seems like UTLA might be going in that direction too. Do you ever feel that, man, maybe I should have just been a lawyer?
Never. I
Awesome.
think
Tell us, tell us.
that ship has sailed. But I think the as a human being, you do experience burnout. I think in whatever field, but I think how you mentioned COVID, there has been a lot more need for my services.
Hmm.
Just because during COVID, it was like a year and a half, 2 years of lockdown,
Right.
critical points of especially the younger kids,
Mhm.
all kids actually, to get like that ability to play outdoors, to develop some of the skills that you develop, like playing outdoors, or playing with other kids, or like even the instruction was very difficult during those years of like
Oh
virtual
gosh, yes.
instruction is not, as much as we tried, it isn't necessarily the same as in-person
Right.
instruction. So they miss some of those like hands-on. Let me put my hand over yours and show you how to
Mhm.
form that A, or show you how to play with that Play-Doh, or get the things like that type of support. Parents tried their best,
Mhm.
but there was still a gap that formed in a lot of the kids, especially the younger ones, where now I have to come in and try to fill those gaps. They
Yeah,
might need
yeah.
that support now. So the caseload, the amount of kids that I see has gotten larger.
Hmm.
So I see more kids than maybe pre-COVID. And so I do have to manage more things. I think that's where the burnout comes from,
Hmm.
because now I have to see more kids, or
Right.
figure out when to attend certain meetings and all these other things that keep my brain awake a little longer
Yeah.
than usual. But I think the the actual work that I do, like playing with the kids, oh my gosh, I love it. I could do it forever. So I
Yeah,
really enjoy that part of it.
that's
But
awesome.
like, I guess the other components that are out of my control, with the amount of kids that I see,
Mhm.
or the amount of meetings that I need to attend, or the amount of schools that I need to go to, those are the things that kind of like make me a little bit more tired. But
Yeah,
I'm, like I said, I'm always very grateful, very blessed
of course.
to do what I do, and to just like enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
You know,
And you mentioned something very important there, that there's a big need
yeah.
for uh, your profession, for
Hmm.
your specific thing. And for a lot of our audience that are thinking of going into the teaching profession, it's not just about being in the classroom,
Yeah.
it's also about expanding and finding other avenues to take to that are in
Yeah.
the education field itself. For all of our audience out there, what is that one advice you want to give to them? They're thinking about going into the teaching profession. What do you want to say to them?
Well, I would say that it's really, there's so many doors to explore. Where if you do want to be in the education field, it could go beyond the classroom,
Mhm.
because although I am not credentialed, I often feel like I'm teaching in a different way.
Of course.
And I'm teaching the skills that I know and that these kids need in a different way, and maybe in like a smaller setting, not with the 30 kids, where I'm just teaching it to two kids at a time, or one kid at a time. So I like that part of my job. And there's like, not you could be so many different things in the school system. If you find that teaching might feel like a little bit overwhelming, or might feel like, hey, I want to do something in the schools, but I'm not sure if teaching is right.
Right.
There are other avenues.
Yeah.
And I really, I guess my story is like, okay, you might think that this is for you, but there might be
Yeah.
something a little bit better, or more, not necessarily better, but a better fit for you.
Right.
And I'm really like, I love being
Yeah.
in the school system. I love working where and being where I do. I love interacting with teachers. They're great people.
Yeah.
I love it. And I learn from them, they learn from me, and it's just a great place to be. And I'm very thankful every day to be there.
Yeah, and I think you show a great example of the different doors that are available for the education field.
Mhm.
Mr. Estrada, thank you so much for this awesome conversation. I hope it resonates. I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of us out there. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next episode.
Capture the passion.